Hello and welcome to the Extraordinarium Show. You're listening to medium and exorcist Ralph Keaton. The following podcast is taken from the Exorcist Diaries. Today, the podcast, I'd like to look at the most common types of ghosts. Those that haunt areas within your property, those that get around us, those type of energies that are more common than others. And it's that type that kind of basically will make you kind of more aware than anything else. Today, the podcast, I'd like to look at the most common types of ghosts. Those that haunt areas within your property, those that get around us, those type of energies that are more common than others. And it's that type that kind of basically will make you kind of more aware than anything else, because yes, we've talked about what signs are, what to look for, what there is, but then we've got to look at what are they, what is going on. So we need to look at the types I call interactive. That is, it knows you're there and it'll react. And I want to just explain it a bit more, why, why it's going on. Because I don't know how you've done this, but I've always sort of said that if a ghost is going to introduce itself to you, they generally have given you a little warning first. Because whilst we've gone through all that side of it, this leads me nicely into the area that I want to talk about, which is this poltergeist activity, this poltergeist phenomena that everybody's going into.
That old chestnut, eh?
Yeah, it is, yeah. But it's quite an important part of what we do, because if I kind of put it into context for you, ghosts are continually trying to contact us. Any of these energies are trying to get involved with you. Poltergeist activity is one of the most common forms that we get. I mean, most people don't know what the word means, and once you get to understand it means noisy,
yeah,
or it means sound. You then start realizing that to create a sound takes some energy, that to create movement takes some energy, but it needs energy to create energy, and so therefore where's it getting it from? You or some other object. Now, poltergeists are one of the type of ghosts that when you encounter them, you have to give them respect. There's no point just dismissing it and saying that was a knock on the wall.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things I say to people is, you've got to look at, if you said to it knock again and it knocks again, that's a very, very powerful energy that's in front of you.
Absolutely.
If you say to it knock and you're waiting 10 minutes and you get a knock, you're talking about what I call a lower level. It's building its energy up, it's getting going. Okay, and it's the ones that respond to you almost immediately, and I mean almost immediately, they're the ones you've got to keep your eye on.
If they're interested in you quick enough to react, you need to be interested in it and very careful.
Correct. Yeah, and Steve, it won't be a one-off. If you said to it, are you there? Because we're going to talk about these higher energies later on, but once you start talking, it's just like you and me now. They'll communicate, they'll talk, they'll get going. It's not the delays, there's no nothing, it's full on.
You'll get little subtle things, but they'll kind of be more dramatic than a normal run-of-the-mill human haunting. Because the likelihood is that things move, or an object maybe weighing 3 or 4 pounds moving. It's highly unlikely you're going to get that from a human haunting. Like we've discussed on other shows before, it's very limited to what it does. It's very subtle. It doesn't need to be doing all else. When you move on to poltergeist, early signs of things is you generally get stuff moving about, pools of water, little odd things that, you'll always get your electrics checked when you've got poltergeist, because they love it. They just dismantle it or they use it or whatever. But you're talking about something now that is different to a human haunting, in a sense that it's far more powerful. It will interact. And in the very early stages, it's almost getting your attention because it wants to interact.
Yeah.
And the minute you do, or your family, it's usually a family unit in it. They'll target one or two in family. There'll be one main target with it, but But once it starts to get that family sort of believing that, hang on, we've got something more than a ghost here going off, it's really rapid in what everything, you get flurries then of what's going off, you know.
That's it, and I want people that are listening to us to understand something. When you've got a poltergeist going on, they're definitely in different levels, so you can't just categorize everything under one big umbrella and go, that's a poltergeist, because unfortunately what you're doing there is you're totally dismissing the skill level and the different levels of harm it can do to you, because if you just said, oh, it's a poltergeist, you do not know what it is. You know, it's like me saying footballer's a footballer.
Yeah.
A lorry driver's a lorry driver.
Yeah.
There are skilled levels inside each. Poltergeist activity is definitely in levels. And the one thing that you and I are doing at the moment is writing up this book on... Oh, strange noise. I don't know if you heard that. That was a whoosh. Because we're talking about it.
Well, it's interesting because most when you look at most famous cases that talk about poltergeist activity, the activity starts with either a rush of wind going through a house, or you get some kind of movement through a house. You know, it's kind of like an announcement that here I am.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I think most interesting thing with poltergeist is it's not to forget that there's so many different theories.
Yes.
But a lot of theories have been kind of placed in intermediate and stuff as the only theory. It can't be anything else. I mean, I strongly disagree with psychic kids, as in it's only certain children with certain abilities that can do all these things and that. And that's caused through, you know, teenage stress. Yeah. And if that's the case, then every street in country should have one. Every street in world should have something going off all the time. And it's not.
Yeah.
They're not cases that kind of. It's only a kind of long running case.
Yes.
That really picks up. Most, like you said before, most people will have poltergeist activity happening in their house. It's just you don't acknowledge it. You know, there is things moving about and shifting around all the time in your house, but
yeah,
you're not gonna, you know, unless you start looking for it and setting cameras up and all this kind of stuff.
But again, this comes back to what I was saying before, because in a lot of cases, it's a low-level poltergeist. So just a little tap, just a little noise, just a little movement. That's that low level. And at that level, it's very good because you can see it, you get the interaction with it, and it usually will die down because it's a burst of energy and it's gone.
Yeah.
You know? And in a lot of cases, somebody says to me, how do I know I've got a poltergeist? How do I know it's that? Well, one of the cases I would honestly say to you is to think about this. I'm dealing with somebody at the minute, and I said to her, it's poltergeist that you've got, and she nearly freaked. But I went, no, listen to me. She's been going to bed at night and she's hearing voices. And I said to her, there's a couple of ways you can get rid of this. You can literally play music, and that just disturbs it, and you listen to your music, and you won't get you can say stop it, and it should stop. You can leave a little light on. But the point about this one is it's using a voice. You can clearly, audibly, I can hear it. So we're talking about a noise of a voice. And she's said, well, even during the day, she's been walking to work and she's hearing somebody talking to her, right? Now, she did say to me, it's threatened me. And I went, what do you mean? And she said, well, and she told me what it said. And I went, look, if you don't listen to me enough, I'm going to raise my voice at you. After a while, I'm going to go, will you listen to me?
Yeah.
And she went, oh, I see. And I went, all you've done is you've not responded. If you'd responded, it would have probably died down, but it's aggravated.
Yeah.
But it's that initial voice, it's that initial thing that's going on. You're not going mad, you're not going crazy, you're not, because she's been to see a doctor, she's been to see a psychologist as well, and they've all said the same. No, everything's fine. So she's thinking now, is she turning psychic? Is she turning? I went, no, because you're hearing these voices, you're getting the little clicks that go along with it. And I said, and that tells me it's low level. It's not, doesn't mean any harm, because it's using the click scenario, much like you train a dog with a clicker. That's what she's getting. Little click, and then she listens, and she's getting the voice. And I'm like, well, just respond to it. Just say stop. If you don't want it, stop it. But you can distract it. And that's what a lot of people don't realise. It's the fact that, why is it choosing nighttime? Because it's quiet.
Yeah.
Why is it doing it when she's walking to work? Because she's doing what I call a routine, where your brain switches off. You run a path, don't you? And what it's doing is interrupting that path.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interrupting that thing where she's going, that's a routine. Often I've driven to work sometimes, and I've looked and thought, how the hell did I get here? And it's at those moments that they come in, because you've gone into that. It's almost like a meditative state.
Yeah.
In some cases, I say to scare you, but it's not. It's just to waken you up. And that's what she's getting, But it's nevertheless poltergeist activity. So I kind of say to people, don't just say because it's poltergeist it's evil. It's not. This thing is not. And it's going to move on to create sounds. And that's what they do. Once they've got your understanding that you can hear them, they'll start to create noises. And those noises are going to get a bit weird. It can be a cat meowing and you haven't got one.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at a lot of cases where audio's been recorded or audio's been evidenced usually starts off with animal noises. So you'll get birds, particularly parrots and that kind of noise. Then it kind of goes into pig noises, that kind of stuff. Then you start to get that gruff voice coming from grunting. It's almost as though it's learning to talk, although, listening in, be very fully aware this thing don't need to learn notes. They know exactly what they're doing. But it tends to sort of birth its voice over a period of time. If you look at Enfield, were a classic for that one with Maurice Gross, when the voice started coming from nowhere. Janet weren't even there, the daughter, I mean, it's a case we'll talk about later, but the voice in the room that they recorded and that, the children weren't there sometimes. So it can't possibly have been one of the kids doing it, And it's just a strange thing. You'll know them noises. They're so much different to others,
Yes.
I'm always wary. If I can hear a voice and it's talking clear and plainly to me, then we're either way further down on a stage as something that we should be, or it's kind of just it's just as it is at that time. It's voicing what it needs to voice. But I'd always be very cautious with talking to things, anyways. But if most cases that are going to go negative from that, you won't quite understand what it says, anyways. It's like a conversation in another room going off.
Yeah.
And you just can't make it out. But it gets you interested enough to strain your ears to be listening for it. And, there's all these little tricks, aren't there?
It is. And I've found that when you've got a fairly new... you see, I hate using the word poltergeist, but when you've got that poltergeist activity going on, when you've got a new one, it's because at the end of the day, it's an energy force, and whether it's a strong one or a weak one, it's going to connect with you. Whether it's using sound or physical touch or whatever, it's no less it's interacting with you.
Yeah.
But when you've got them at that new level like this, where it's a little voice, where it's little sounds, where it's little things, you're fairly safe. It's not. Don't panic. No. It's trying to form something. It's trying to do something, and even if it's like a light touch, followed by a voice, followed by a sound, it's nevertheless. It's just trying to communicate. It's just that it's unnerving. And we freak.
It's like we've said before in earlier programs. It's your reaction. That's what it's about. It's it doing that thing at that time in your property around you is designed for you to react. Be that if it's a human spirit and wanting that acknowledgement of something not done or whatever business there is there that needs to be done. Or it's something else that wants your attention, because the minute it gets it, you've allowed it. We've talked about contracts and stuff, which I know we'll go into further than that, but That's the key thing is, like you say, it might only just be little sounds. It might only just a little, you know, a little draft, a little touch, your hair moves, little things like that. Still important enough though to acknowledge that this could go either way at this stage, couldn't it?
Yes. Yeah. My cautionary tale on this, Steve, is if you've got a poltergeist form of activity, and like I've said before, we are going to go through those levels. We're going to talk about what these levels are, because I want people to understand where you are with when you're dealing with a ghost. Whether you're experienced or whether you're not experienced doesn't matter, as long as you know where you are. Now, it's the speed at which you get responses that is the thing that's got to be in your foremost of your mind. So and you've got to be careful with it, because if it realizes you're recognizing it's quite a powerful one, it'll slow down. But it's this, how clever is it? Do you know, I have one of the worst cases I've dealt with. I was thinking in my head, I'm going to go over to the door, and as I went towards the door, it slammed the door shut.
Yeah.
So it's even listening to what I was thinking, so I had to be very careful, and I had to end up just thinking to myself, just do random things. My ultimate goal was to get out, but random things. So I ran into one corner, I ran to another corner, I jumped. I just literally, I must look like a crazy man to the family, but I was just basically wanting to get myself into a position where it couldn't follow me. But what I'd realised very quickly was it had started off really gentle, but I suddenly realised it was actually answering me in such a way that, no, you're knowing what I'm asking, you're knowing what I'm doing. And I realised it was moving up these levels, you know. And so what I say to people is, you've got to be careful of its response time, and careful of what it's doing and how it's responding. You've got to put a little bit of thought into this. If you say to it, make a noise, bang on the wall again, right? And let's say the first noise you heard, it sounded like it was at a distance, just a really small rumble or whatever, and you wait a little bit, and that sound's got closer to you, it knows it can actually make a louder noise, not necessarily closer, but it can make a louder noise. The thing that you've got to be careful of is, if that sound resonates in your ears, it knows what it's doing with you. It knows it hurt your ear. It knows it's made you jump. And that's when you've got to start thinking. Just think a bit more, because, yeah, deal with poltergeists, however you want to term them, but just think about these levels. And what's lovely is the most common type of poltergeist activity in your property is going to be, or around you, if it's you, we shall talk about that in a minute. If it's around you, it's going to be gentle taps, it's going to be gentle voices, it's going to be things that are around you, not threatening. And even if it's threatening, you've got to sit back and think, what have I done? Have I caused it to be that way? Is there something I'm doing that's making it? And just take a step back. And listen, it'd be a foolish man to walk into a property where there's an energy that's stronger than you, go in thinking, I can tackle this.
Yeah.
99% of cases, boxers don't keep boxing. What they'll end up doing is they'll step back from one another, suss it out, and then come out again. And that's exactly what I do. So what I'm going to say to you is, if you've got poltergeist activity, don't try dealing with it. Sit back.
Yeah.
Give it time.
Yeah.
Give it a bit of respect. Give yourself a bit of respect, and give that respect as well.
I totally agree with that, Ralph. I mean, it's that as well. Even at the early stages, like you're saying, little taps, knocks, all these kind of little things and that. It really makes no difference. It's how you react. If you engage with this, the likelihood is it will run with you. You know, it's like that. When you look at most poltergeist cases, very rare anybody gets injured. Very rare that anybody gets injured. I mean, you see things on telly like classic poltergeist cases where they're being, dragged upside a wall with a pair of curtains with invisible hands and all this kind of stuff. It's very highly unlikely that them kind of things don't, happen. Usually, if it's throwing things, look for zigzag patterns. They never, if it's dropping things out at sky and stuff into a room, it tends to fall in a zigzag, which is weird. You've seen that, that's a weird one when you see that.
Yeah.
If something's thrown at you, it tends to come at a ferocious speed, but yet when it hits you, it's kind of just a little tap.
Yeah.
That's another one, you know. It's almost like it can't do your harm. It will, but it can't. It's almost like it's just poltergeist to me activity. I've always said it's a training ground for demonic, basically. That's how I see it. That's from my side.
Yeah.
And it's that quite, it's not quite a poltergeist case. You never quite get to it, you know, an end to it, really. It kind of just fizzles away or it just stops. But it usually just stops when everybody who's involved in it kind of goes, oh, yeah, it's just doing what it's doing. And interest's gone.
And there you go. Look, that's what I'm saying about these levels, because at that level you're dealing with something you can deal with. You're dealing with something that's a lower level.
Yeah.
It's when somebody turns around to me and says, "I'm feeling sick" or "I'm feeling lightheaded," because then I'm looking, going, now it's moved into your zone. It's moved into you. Okay. Now, if you can step out of it and you feel better, a couple of things could be happening there. It could be environment that's caused you that. But when you step back into it, if it feels, one of the things I always look for when I'm talking to people is when somebody says to me, I felt like I've gone over a bridge and my stomach went.
Yeah.
Because I can look at you and go, well, that's the equivalent of it getting hold of you and chucking you in the air. That's it, literally playing with your energy. And even now we're still talking about a lower level type of energy. But you're right. I think you've got to remember that no matter what's going on around you, you're stronger than it. You're always going to be more powerful. It's just having the nerve to sit there and go, I'm going to...
You lose any power you've got or any kind of safety you've got by pushing or by going into it or getting involved in it or engaging, all that kind of stuff. That's where you tend to lose your power. Whereas, as in, you know, it'll increase, more things will happen. You get a lot of mockery with poltergeist cases as well. You know, like you get a lot of imitation and things like that. So it'll say it's one person. You'll hear that person in that room, might be your wife, and you go in room and she's not there, and then she walks in front door, she's been shopping. So there's a lot of like, and a lot of that, it's making a noise upstairs, so you go upstairs, you get upstairs, and it's making a noise downstairs.
Yeah.
But they're all things that like that. I think that's where this childish ghost thing came along with poltergeist. It were kind of a noisy ghost or a childish thing. It were mischievous. I don't know. When you read some of cases, if you look at Enfield, you're talking like their old gas fire or electric gas fires, heavy old thing that were in, you know, chimney breast. Seeing that being ripped out by invisible hands and thrown across a room is not mischievous, is it?
Nope. No.
You've gone beyond me, you know, and I think that's, you should be wary of them things as well. Is, although we're saying observe its action, not its reaction kind of thing. What we're also saying is you've got to be absolutely nailed on that you don't cross any lines, because if you do, well, you're in for a tough ride. You're in for a tough ride.
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear of many poltergeist cases. Don't really turn into possession cases or things like that, but the criteria is the same.
Yeah, you're leading me on, Steve, to what I was about to say, which is there's an what I call an interactive energy form. Okay, and they are almost identical to poltergeist, except for they're the ones that step way beyond, and then they're the ones that give you this throw in a thing, because they're using pure energy. You know.
I think the thing with that is as well is that they'll step in at any time. It's your low level things will do all your damage. They'll start it all off, but for once you get into violent acts and everything, they just sort of, it's like a changing air or whatever, change of scene. All of a sudden, bang, you've got this really different thing going off in your house, and you can tell, you know. Same with poltergeist. You get quite a lot of electric air with poltergeist. You get a lot of electrical popping noises and things like that. But it always tends to be just to a limit. It might throw something, it might lift you up and throw you across a room and that, but you wouldn't be damaged, you wouldn't be crippled by it. Whereas the other thing, be killed by it. That's the difference. There is a difference. Yeah. Serious, very serious. It's all serious, isn't it? It's all serious. It's just.
It is incredibly. It is as well, and the thing about anything is you're always treading a fine line. And the one thing I've never ever done in all my time of doing what I do is I never goad them. I've never said to them, go and make it bigger, make it louder. I've just basically said to them, what are you doing? Make a noise, because if you keep it nice and calm, they'll give you that same respect. But when you deal with these more, like I say, interactive energy form, what you're going to get there is you're going to get the start of what we call the pulling of the bedsheet off the bed, an object that disappears, keys that suddenly turn up, doors that can't open. And again, very similar to poltergeist, and this is where the grey area is, because poltergeist can do a very similar thing by slamming a door, but a spiritual energy will not only slam it, it'll physically hold it, and if you're going to, it's liable to slam it into you. So it's kind of like, so we're talking about a different level. So common, if we go back to where we were at the beginning of the program, common ways of doing things is literally, they're just signs, and they've got no interaction with you whatsoever. They're just signs. They just want to let you know that you're in their zone, and I think we've all got that ability, Steve, haven't we? Everybody's got that ability to do it. The big difference, I think, in a lot of cases for me is, and it's going to come into your realm, I think, more than anything else, is this belief thing. If you've got an energy that has a belief, its own belief, so it can be of let's say a Catholic background or a Protestant background or a Jewish background. It has a belief. You've got something you can deal with. There's something there that you can say, I can not control it, but I can certainly respect it, and I can communicate with it using the tools of its belief.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only way of testing those sort of things is to literally notice what's being thrown around. So I've always said, if I've seen crosses thrown across a room, I know that thing has got a belief in that system.
Yeah, and it's likely, but again, going back to human spirit hauntings, a human spirit haunting won't mock religious items. It won't destroy things. It won't do any of them kind of things. Its intent isn't to do that. When you're going beyond that, non-human, then you can clearly see it. You can see its intent. If you're frightened by it to a point where you're all living in one room, or you don't go in a certain room, or all these things, then it can't be a good thing. It's got to be a bad thing, because it's not, and it's no good being blasé and thinking, well, I'll just tell it to go and I'll just this and that. When these things are doing it, if it's a bad thing doing it, there's also a reason why it's doing it as well. Just like there is with a human spirit that's wanting to contact for some reason. They're doing the same thing, but their intent is it's a lot deeper, far deeper. And once you engage with it, it ain't going to stop.
Yes.
No matter what. We're not, people have moved house, follows them.
Yeah.
People that you separate a family, put some people over here and some over here. Let's see how it's reacting with what it's doing and that. But once you get to them sort of stages, you can clearly see the intent of it is bad.
Yeah.
And that's why I look at poltergeist in the same way, that most people with poltergeist in early stages are frightened.
Yeah.
The stuff that happens is astonishing. It is astonishing. You go in a room, and there's, if you go in my front room, I've got a couple of settees, a telly. And then I walk out and I go back in, and my room's full of chairs.
Aye.
In a split second. you know, you're talking something that's ultimately more powerful than you've ever come across, you know. But it to just purely materialise that stuff there. But how shocking is it to go in a room where there's nothing, then come back in 10 seconds later and it's full of something? It's a shocking sight, isn't it? You know, very disturbing.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, again, because we're going to talk about cases in some case in another podcast, and we've got that scenario going on where I remember walking around one house. We were in the kitchen. We went in the kitchen. We walked around. Went upstairs, came back down. I went downstairs to say, well, let's have a drink of water. Went in the kitchen, and there were all the knives and forks, and all laid out on the table like you were going to sit down. And we all sort of looked at one another and went, right, you know. And the weird thing was, I couldn't tell anybody whether they could feel anything because it just felt quiet. We went back upstairs, and all the bedclothes were rolled. They'd actually been rolled up. So what we'd got an energy there that was basically saying, I'm going to have fun. I'm playing with you, because it wasn't doing it when we were in the room, it was doing it without the room.
It's not a two-way fun thing, though, is it? It's not a mutual thing. It's making fun of you. Although some of the stuff it does, you might find it funny. And sometimes in stressful situations, people laugh. It's a perfectly normal release, and you might laugh at something that it's doing. But deep down, there's what it's doing are things that, you know, we know that human spirits can't do them things. They're limited to what they can do. Whereas you've got poltergeist also, like, it's a middle ground. You know, you can get there's poltergeists that interact and seems to be friendly and playful and all these things, but then that same case, somebody from outside can come in and it'll attack them.
And it's exactly that. This is exactly that. And that's what the problem is with the poltergeist side of things, and which is why, again, I keep coming back to it, but why we're talking about different levels, like going upstairs. The fact that it's going higher and the levels moving up is the fact that it's ascended and it's got higher and it's got more strength and it's got more interactivity. And so we have to be very careful how we talk about what we're doing on the podcast, as well as what people are doing out there, because in and around your property, 99% of the cases, it's simple stuff. It's really just not going at that level. And even if you went to a haunted castle, or where I put in brackets, people say there's a demonic, like a jail.
Yeah.
Not necessary to be a high level. It can be just a very simple high energy.
If you're a master of your trade, and you've got people under you, and you've put all years in, you don't need to do all. They'll do it for you. You know, so for me, this is how it'll get the lower end of stuff getting your attention, doing little things, playing these little malicious games, waking you up at certain times, and, you know, and like most poltergeist is inconvenience when you look, because it destroys things. So you'll get kitchen cupboard, everything will come out, be all over the floor, food will be up and down, and it's constantly destroying things until you're left basically with nothing, you know, the more you play with it.
Steve, for the moment, we're going to just close this part of the podcast down. We're going to go on to podcast 3 by continuing on with the use of poltergeists and what's going on around it. I just want to thank the audience, and again, I'm going to reiterate, if you need to get in contact with us regarding any of the subjects we've talked about over any of the podcasts, it's the team at ralphkeaton.co.uk. We have 2 websites. That is ralphkeaton.co.uk and extraordinarium.co.uk. You can find other podcasts, you can find other information that we're putting out there. We're looking at doing tours, we're looking at bringing objects to your venues. So if you need anywhere or you know anywhere, let us know. But I'd just like to say thank you very much, and we'll continue this in the next podcast. Thank you.